Hey everyone, and welcome to our next episode of Masterpiece Storytime, where we are reading Treasure Island. Today's chapter is chapter 25, The Voice Among the Trees. The men were now exhausted and rattled and sat down at the first opportunity. They all turned to talk of Flint. He was so ugly, and his temper was vicious. Well then, said Silver, you should thank your stars he's dead. Then, all at once, we heard a voice call out, 15 men on a dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. The men were instantly in terror. It's Flint, they cried, back from the dead. And then the voice called out, fetch me my sword, Darby. Those were his last words, one of the men cried out. The pirates stayed rooted to the ground, each man crying that he wanted to go and that they were afraid of ghosts. Richard, who was the man with the fever and sickness in the group, read from his Bible and seemed about to go mad. But Silver stood his ground. That voice had an echo, he said. Ghosts don't have echoes. That someone made of flesh and blood. This seemed to bring the men around. I, said one. That didn't sound like Flint. It sounded like someone else. It sounded like Ben Gunn. And it was clear none was afraid of Ben Gunn, even if they had thought him dead. Even as a ghost, they were not concerned about him. Soon the men were back on track and turning their attention toward the climb ahead. Silver pulled me by the rope with which they had tied my hands, and I could see his mood change. I could tell his mind was on the treasure. He scowled my way as he pulled me along. I knew then that all thought of mercy was gone from him. He would try to find the treasure and his ship and slit the throat of any man who stood in his way. I was shaken and tired, and Richard continued to babble madly behind as we walked in the blazing heat. I thought of the many men who had been killed here by Flint, and thought I would be next. Suddenly, we were in the clearing and heard Mary shouting as we moved forward. We ran to him, and Silver doubled his pace until we all came to a halt. Before us was a great hole, and we could tell that it was not new. The sides were caved in and grass had grown in it. At its bottom were a broken pick and bits of packing crate from the Walrus, Flint's ship. But all was clear too. The hoard had been found and raided, and the 700,000 pounds of treasure were gone. Now the men were in a rage. They all yelled out and cursed, but with Silver, the change was quicker. He turned and handed me a pistol, and we quickly stepped off to the side. So I said, you've changed sides again? He paid me no mind, and the men jumped in the pit to find only one single coin. They nimbly climbed out and turned to Silver, their eyes spelling murder. So this is the wooden-legged fool who's led us here, said George Merry. Well, look at his face. He knew all along there was no treasure. They all glared at Silver, who soon spoke up. So, back to seeking the post of captain, eh, George? They stood across from us, and we looked toward them, pistols ready. There's two of them, one a cripple and one a boy, whose heart I will have, and there's 5 of us, said George. But just then, shots rang out, and 2 of the men dropped, with Mary falling into the pit. Long John quickly fired both rounds into him and said, I reckon I settled you, George. Suddenly, the doctor, Gray, and Ben Gunn joined us with their smoking pistols. We ran quickly through the woods to cut off the escaped men from the boats. Soon enough, we found they had gone in the wrong direction. We took a rest while the doctor explained what had happened. Ben, in his year-long wanderings, had found the skeleton and the treasure. He had dug up the gold and transported it to his cave only 2 months before we arrived on the island. It was the afternoon of the attack when the doctor had gotten this confession from him. The next morning, after seeing the boat gone, the doctor had gone to Silver and given him the map. After all, it was useless now, and he had given him the supplies in order to gain our friend's safe passage to Ben's cave, where there was salted goat in great supply. He also wished to keep the treasure secure. That morning they had headed back to cut us off, knowing that we would seek the treasure. Ben had run ahead, and remembering his shipmates' superstitions, he'd called out and frightened them. Lucky I had Hawkins, said Silver, or no one would have come for me. Everyone agreed with him, and we made our way off around the point to the boats. We then paddled by the mouth of Ben's cave and saw the squire waving to us. We also saw the Hispaniola floating offshore, raised by the oncoming tides. We pulled into the cove, and there the squire scowled and cursed Silver, but let him be. Then all entered the cove and saw Captain Smollett resting beside a fire in great heaps of gold and treasure. So many had died to find it, and so many had died to claim it. Ships and bodies lay at the bottom of the sea on account of it. I don't think we'll go to sea again, shall we, Jim? Said the doctor. And with that, we fell to eating a delicious meal with food gathered from the boat. Silver sat back and seemed again to be the man who had first appeared to me, helpful, quiet, and courteous, the perfect seaman. Alright guys, that's chapter 25. Please join me next time when we read chapter 26, which is the last chapter of our story, A Fond Farewell. We make our way home. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this last chapter. See you next time. Bye guys.